Hello, good people, and welcome to Hillbilly Cat History, where we explore the times, events, and people surrounding Elvis Presley. Thank you for choosing this video. In this episode, the day Elvis Presley's Aunt Retha eloped, how Gladys Presley learned love could open doors. And here we see a picture of Tupelo, Mississippi on April 27th, 1924. When Elvis Presley's Aunt Retha suddenly disappeared in 1927 and returned with a wedding band on her finger, it wasn't just a shock to the family, it was a revelation for her younger sister Gladys. Until then, 15-year-old Gladys Smith had lived a life ruled by routine, poverty, and family duty. But Retha's bold leap into love sparked something new, a realization that escape was possible, that love could open doors on which she had never knocked. In 1924, Alric Weaver Mansell, son of Jehu and Dora Mansell, was born. Bob and family moved to Jim Love's farm. A 10-year-old boy named John Marcy also lived on the farm. John's mother passed away when John was around 1.5 years old. Although his father was alive, John was left to fend for himself as an orphan. Farmer Jim Love took charge of young John, raising him on the farm. Looking back on these events more than 55 years later, John described the Smiths by saying, "They were so poor, they wore hog rings in their shoes, wore them on every toe to keep the soles of their shoes on. They were like a mule train. They just kept on moving. Sometimes they were asked to move on." And over on the left, we can see a period advertisement for hog jewelry, which are the hog rings to which John is referring. If you would like to read this advertisement in more detail, you can. Just go to hillbillycathistory.wordpress.com. John may have been referencing the Lamb farm the Smiths left to move to the Love farm. If Farmer Lamb felt a need to physically attack Bob, and Gladys did smack him in the head with a plowshare, per family legend, it seems likely Farmer Lamb did ask the Smiths to leave. Shoes were expensive. The most inexpensive pair of boys' work shoes from the Sears catalog was $1.57, which would be $28 in today's money. The cheapest pair for girls, at $1.49, was like $27 in today's money. Bob had at least 4 boys at home. The eldest, Thomas, had married by this time, but may have still been living in the family shack, just as Bob had lived with his mother Ann in his early married days. Bob had 5 girls. For Bob to buy all 9 children's shoes, allowing married Thomas to fend for himself, the minimum cash money cost would have been $13.73, or $252 in today's money, or about 2% of Bob's likely annual earnings as a sharecropper of around $720, which we would think of today as $13,000, which is below the federal poverty limit. Up on the right, we can see period advertisements for those shoes that I described within this paragraph. And this is where I pulled the dollar amounts for these shoes. So this is exactly what Bob would have been looking at if he'd gone to the local Sears store and tried to put an order in. On May 13th, 1924, Harold Lee Smith, the son of Thomas, age 22, and his wife Minnie, was born. In 1925, Lavelle Smith, age 17 or 18, married William Ed Smith. During the winter of 1925, 13-year-old Gladys joined the school girls basketball team, the only organized sport girls were permitted to join. Skilled in dribbling, passing, and shooting, Gladys was superb, a star athlete. Gladys was so good at basketball, especially in her position as forward, the only person who could play competitively against her was Miss Mary Harville, the coach. For the first time in her life, Gladys was acknowledged as the best at something by her classmates, teachers, and friends. And over on the left, we can see a picture of the 1925 Crystal Springs, Mississippi high school girls basketball team. This is not the team that Gladys played on, but it is a girls basketball team from Mississippi. I don't think that Gladys and her team would have had matching uniforms, but this gives you a good idea of perhaps what a girls basketball team would have looked like at the time. Here I've linked to a documentary about the oldest women's basketball film footage from 1904. This, I believe, would have been very similar to the way Gladys was playing basketball, even though it was 20 years later. And you can see, even here in the still shot, that they're playing out on a lawn, kind of like it's badminton and not basketball. There's no actual court. They're using temporary goals made out of, it looks like 2x4s. It's just a very interesting look at how Gladys might have played basketball. Not exactly what we would think of as basketball today. On January 14th, 1926, Lavelle and her husband William's son, Lee Edward Smith, was born. At age 14, Gladys received her first request from a boy to walk her home from school. Gladys didn't know what to do, so she did what seemed right to her, pulling off her shoes and running away from the boy as fast as she could. He chased her, eventually catching up, but he had to run very fast. Gladys eventually slowed down, but forced the young man to walk on the opposite side of the road. He did not walk Gladys home again. In 1927, Retha Smith, age 18, eloped with Purvey Lee T.C. Lloyd, a field hand new to the area. Retha's sudden marriage must have surprised 15-year-old Gladys as much as it did her parents and siblings, but she filed elopement away in her memory as a possible future strategy for herself. Long before Elvis recorded his first hit, his mother was already dancing to the rhythm of a revolution. In the quiet Mississippi countryside, a teenage Gladys Presley discovers a Victrola, and with it, the 78 RPM records that stirred her soul and moved her feet. The music that once filled her world would one day help shape her sons. Don't miss our next episode. Gladys Presley discovers 78 RPM records, the music that moved Elvis's mother. You do not want to miss it. Thank you for joining Hillbilly Cat History as we explored this piece of the Elvis Presley puzzle. Stop on by anytime so we can chat again.